Clara Bennett's hands were still warm from her father's chest when the stranger rode out of the blizzard and offered to buy her as a wife. $350. That's what he said she was worth, enough to bury her father proper and keep the debt collector from taking everything else. The whole town would call her desperate. They'd whisper she'd sold herself to a mountain hermit with nothing but worn clothes and a guilty conscience. They didn't know about the 3 motherless daughters waiting in his hidden valley. They didn't know anything. This is her story. Stay until the end. Hit that subscribe button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels. The coughing woke her like it always did, wet, rattling the sound of a man drowning in his own lungs. Clara threw off her blanket and crossed the cabin barefoot. 4 steps. She'd counted them 1,000 times in 3 years of nights just like this one, past the crooked table, around the woodpile that was never enough, straight to the bed where her father was dying by inches. "Papa!" She grabbed his shoulders, helped him sit up. "Papa, breathe. Just breathe." Henry Bennett's body shook with the force of the coughing. When it finally passed, he sagged against her lighter than a man should be. She could feel every rib through his nightshirt. "Clara, girl." His voice came out wet, ruined. "You shouldn't be up. And you shouldn't be dying, but here we are." He laughed at that, tried to anyway. It turned into another cough that left dark spots on his pillow. Neither of them mentioned the blood anymore. What was the point? "What time is it?" "Near dawn, I reckon." "Hartley's coming today." It wasn't a question. Clara's jaw tightened. "Let him come. $287. Henry shook his head slowly. "That's what my whole life amounts to. A debt I can't pay, and a daughter I can't protect." "You protected me plenty." "Did I?" His hand found hers in the gray light. The bones felt like bird wings, fragile and hollow. "Your mama would have known what to do. She always did. But me, I just watched it all fall apart. The ranch, the horses, everything. And now I'm leaving you with nothing but—" "Stop." Clara squeezed his hand harder than she meant to. "Just stop, Papa, please." The silence stretched between them, full of things neither could say. "He proposed again," Henry said finally. "Hartley. I heard him last week through the wall. I turned him down." "What'd you tell him?" "That I'd rather freeze to death than warm his bed." Henry's eyes, faded blue like denim left too long in the sun, found hers. "That's my girl. Stubborn as your mama." His grip tightened. "But Clara, after I'm gone—" "You ain't gone yet. I will be, soon." He said it plain, the way you'd say the weather was turning or the well was running dry. "And when I am, you're gonna have to make hard choices. Real hard." "I know. Promise me something." "Papa, promise me you won't marry Hartley. Not to save this cabin, not to clear the debts, not for any reason. That man's got darkness in him. I've seen it. The way he looks at you." His jaw clenched. "Promise me." Clara knelt beside the bed, bringing herself eye to eye with the man who'd taught her to ride, to read, to survive. The man who was leaving her, whether she was ready or not. "I promise," she said. "I won't marry Samuel Hartley, not ever." "Good." Something eased in his face. "Good." Hartley's horse was black and expensive, just like everything else about him. Clara watched him dismount through the frost-covered window. Same leather satchel, same coat that cost more than her family earned in a year, same smile that never quite reached his eyes. She met him at the door before he could knock. "Miss Bennett." He touched his hat brim. "Lovely morning?" "State your business." "Right to it then." He pulled papers from his satchel. $287 plus interest. Due by December 15th. He glanced at the sky where snow clouds were piling up like dirty wool. "That's 12 days, Miss Bennett. The bank won't wait longer." "We'll find the money." Hartley laughed. Not mean, exactly worse than that. Pitying. "How you've sold the horses, sold the cattle. Sold everything worth selling. His eyes traveled over her slowly, and Clara felt her skin crawl. Almost everything. Watch yourself. I'm trying to help you. He stepped closer. Clara didn't back up. Marry me. The debts disappear. Your father dies comfortable instead of in a charity ward. You become respectable. Respectable? Clara tasted the word like poison. That what you call it? I call it practical. You should try it. Here's practical for you, Mr. Hartley. She leaned in close enough to see the broken blood vessels in his nose, the yellow at the edges of his eyes. I'd rather be a homeless orphan than your wife. I'd rather starve in a snowbank. I'd rather... Pride. His voice went cold. That's all you've got left, isn't it? Pride and a dying father and a cabin that'll be mine in 12 days anyway. It ain't yours yet. No. He smiled, and this time the darkness her father warned about flickered behind his eyes. But it will be. And when you're standing in the snow with nothing, you'll remember this conversation different. He mounted his horse without another word. Clara watched until he disappeared into the tree line, her hands shaking with rage she couldn't afford to feel. Clara! Her father's voice weak as water pulled her back inside. I heard, he said. Every word. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to... You did good. His eyes were wet. Real good. Your mama would have said the same damn thing. He reached for her hand. But Clara, after I'm gone, you find another way, any other way. You hear me? I hear you, Papa. Promise me. I promise. But 3 days later, the stranger came. Clara was splitting wood when she heard the hoofbeats slow, steady wrong somehow. She straightened with the axe still in her hand, watching the rider materialize out of the snow like a ghost. Tall. That was the first thing she noticed. Tall and broad-shouldered, sitting his horse like he'd been born there. His clothes were worn canvas coat patched at the elbows, wool trousers gone thin at the knees. Nothing about him suggested money or status. But something about the way he carried himself made Clara's grip tighten on the axe handle. He stopped at the edge of the property, didn't push closer, just sat there studying the cabin the woodpile her. Miss Clara Bennett. She didn't answer. Out here, you didn't confirm nothing to strangers. The man nodded like he understood. Fair enough. Name's Jacob Stone. I rode down from the high country looking for you specifically. Why? Because I got a proposition. One that might solve problems for both of us. He paused. May I get down from this horse? Clara considered. He'd kept his distance, asked permission. That was something. Fine, but this axe stays where it is. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe. I'd expect nothing less, ma'am. He dismounted and removed his hat. His hair was dark, shot through with gray at the temples, too much gray for a man who couldn't be past 35. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and when they met hers, they didn't waver. I'll speak plain, he said. I know your situation. Know about the debts, your father's sickness, Hartley's proposal. I know you're running out of time. You've been watching me. Observing. He didn't apologize. I also know you turned Hartley down when saying yes would have solved your problems. That tells me about your character. What do you want, Mr. Stone? He took a breath. Something shifted in his face, the mask of composure slipping just enough to show the exhaustion underneath. I got a ranch up in the high country, cattle operation Hidden Valley. It's isolated but profitable. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. I also got 3 daughters. Emma's 12, Lily's 8, Rose just turned 4. Clara's stomach dropped. 3 children. She hadn't counted on children. Their mother died birthing Rose. Jacob continued, his voice going rough. I ain't done right by them since. They need someone. Someone strong, patient, someone who don't scare easy. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you marriage. The word landed between them like a thrown stone. You want to marry me? Clara heard her own voice from far away. We've never met. I know enough. He held out the paper. Bank draft. $350. Enough to clear your debts and leave your father money for proper care. His eyes held hers. Marry me. Come to the ranch. Help me raise my girls. The money's yours either way, whether this works or not. Clara's mind was racing, trying to find the trick, the trap. Why marriage? You could hire a governess, a housekeeper. Governesses quit. Housekeepers leave. His jaw tightened. My daughters have lost enough people. They need someone who can't just walk away when things get hard. So, you want to trap me. I want to offer you a contract. A fair one. He stepped closer, not threatening, just earnest. Desperate in his own way. You'll have your own room. Your own space. I ain't looking for that kind of marriage. Not unless we both want it someday. I'm looking for a partner. Why me? Clara demanded. Why specifically me? Because I watched you tell Samuel Hartley you'd rather freeze than marry him. Because you're still standing in front of your father's cabin with an axe in your hand instead of running. Because... He stopped, swallowed. Because my girls need someone who won't break. And you don't look like you break easy, Miss Bennett. Clara stared at him. At the worn clothes and the tired eyes and the set of his jaw that said he'd carry this weight whether she helped or not. Your wife, she said slowly. How did she really die? Pain crossed his face, raw and immediate. Like I said, childbirth. The doctor was 2 days' ride. I went for him myself. Rode through the night. His voice cracked. By the time we got back, Rose was alive. Sarah wasn't. You blame yourself. Every damn day. He didn't look away. I couldn't save her. Can't give my girls their mama back. But I can give them someone who might help them remember how to be a family. Clara thought about her father in that narrow bed, about Hartley's smile, about the fence posts she'd counted through the window her whole life, each one marking the edge of a world that kept shrinking. I need to talk to my father, Jacob nodded. I'll wait. I'll bow. Henry listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When Clara finished, he was quiet for a long moment. The only sound was his breathing, wet, labored, counting down. This Jacob Stone, he finally said. What do your gut tell you? Clara thought about it, honest. That he's telling the truth. About the girls, about his wife, about being desperate. Just a different kind of desperate than Hartley. Desperate men do desperate things. I know. Henry turned his head toward the window. Outside, snow was falling thick and fast. 3 little girls. That's a lot of responsibility. I know that too. And you'd be stuck there all winter, alone with strangers. Yes. Henry was quiet again. Then he pushed himself up, really up on his own strength, and met her eyes with an intensity she hadn't seen in months. I'm dying, Clara. We both know it. Week, maybe 2. Won't see Christmas. He held up a hand before she could speak. Let me finish. When I go, you'll have nothing. No money, no home, no protection. Hartley will be circling like a vulture. He'll pick you apart. Papa, this Stone fellow, he's offering you an escape. Maybe good, maybe bad, but an escape. Henry's voice was stronger than it had been in weeks, drawing on something deep. You're smart girl. Strongest person I know, including your mama. If anyone can walk into the unknown and come out standing, it's you. You want me to say yes. I want you to have a chance. His hand found hers. That's all I ever wanted. Clara felt the tears coming and didn't try to stop them. I don't want to leave you. I know, baby girl. His thumb brushed her cheek. But you got your whole life ahead. Don't waste it at an old man's deathbed. He pulled her close, pressed his lips to her forehead. Go. Live. Find something worth fighting for. Papa, promise me one more thing. Anything. Don't let those little girls forget how to laugh. Whatever else happens, don't let them forget. She found Jacob exactly where she'd left him. Snow had piled on his shoulders, his hat, but he hadn't moved. "You didn't take shelter," Clara said. "You didn't say I could." She almost smiled. "Well, that's honest. I try to be." He watched her cross the yard toward him. "What's your answer?" "I got conditions." "Name them." "My father gets a real doctor. From Helena if you have to. I want him comfortable." "Done. I write to him, as often as I want. You don't read my letters." "Agreed." "And this marriage." Clara stopped in front of him close enough to see the snowflakes caught in his dark hair. "It's a partnership, not ownership. You don't control me, don't make choices for me, don't treat me like property." Something shifted in Jacob's face. "I had a real marriage once, Miss Bennet. I know the difference between a wife and a possession." He held out his hand. "You have my word." Clara looked at it. Work roughened, steady, real. "There's one more thing," she said. "Your daughters. Tell me about them. Really tell me." Jacob's hand dropped. For a moment he looked away toward the mountains she couldn't see through the snow. "Emma's the oldest, 12. She remembers her mama best, which means she remembers losing her best too. She reads everything she can find. I think she's looking for answers in those books. Answers I can't give her." He paused. "She won't trust you. Not at first. Maybe not for a long time. She's already decided no one can replace Sarah." "And Lily?" 8, shy, gets sick, easy chest colds, fevers. She draws pictures of her mama from memory, even though the memories are fading." His voice roughened. "She's scared all the time, of storms, of strangers, of losing anyone else." "And Rose?" 4 years old, and never knew her mother at all." Jacob's jaw worked. "She asks why. Why is Mama gone? Why can't she come back? Why? And I never have an answer that makes sense to a child." Clara absorbed this. 3 girls, 3 different kinds of grief, 3 chances to fail. "They might hate me," she said. "Emma might, for a while. And you're asking me to walk into that anyway." "I'm asking you to try." His eyes met hers. "That's all I can ask, that you try." Clara thought about her promise to her father. Don't let them forget how to laugh. She reached out and took Jacob's hand. "Then I reckon you better start calling me Clara." The preacher came that same day, a circuit rider named Reverend Thomas, who looked like he'd married enough desperate couples not to ask questions. "You sure about this, miss?" he asked quietly while Jacob arranged things with Mrs. Miller. "Does it matter?" "Always matters." The Reverend's eyes were kind, tired. "Marriage is a covenant. I won't speak the words if you don't mean them." Clara thought about that, for better or worse, richer or poorer, sickness and health. "I'll mean them," she said. "Whatever else happens, I'll honor my part." The ceremony took 10 minutes. Henry couldn't stand, so they did it beside his bed. Jacob wore the same worn clothes. Clara wore her mother's dress blue wool, smelling faintly of lavender and memory. "Do you, Jacob Elijah Stone, take this woman?" "I do." "And do you, Clara Louise Bennett, take this man?" Clara looked at Jacob, this stranger who would be her husband, whose children she'd mother, whose life she'd share for reasons neither of them fully understood. His gray eyes held hers, waiting. Not demanding, just waiting. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you man and wife." No kiss. They just nodded at each other, 2 people who'd struck a bargain and meant to keep it. Clara signed the certificate. Clara Louise Stone. The name felt like a stranger's coat, too big, wrong shape, borrowed. But it was hers now. Whatever came next. That night she sat with her father one last time. "Tell me about this valley," Henry said. His voice was fading, the medicine pulling him under. "This place you're going." "I don't know much. Just that it's hidden, cut off in winter." "And the girls?" "Emma, Lily, and Rose. 12, 8, and 4. Emma's the hard one." "That's what he says." Henry was quiet for a moment. Then, "You know why your mama named you Clara? After Grandma. After a woman who survived things that would have broken anyone else." His hand found hers in the darkness. "You carry that name, Clara girl, that strength. Whatever happens in that valley, remember who you come from." "I will, Papa. And write to me. Every week. Promise." "I promise." His eyes closed. His breathing slowed. Clara sat beside him until dawn crept through the window, memorizing the sound of him, the smell of him, the weight of his hand in hers. Then she kissed his forehead, whispered goodbye, and walked out of the only home she'd ever known. Jacob was waiting with 2 horses. "The gray mare's yours," he said. "Name's Sage, mountain-bred, sure-footed. She'll take care of you." Clara mounted without help. She'd been riding since she could walk. "Ready?" Jacob asked. She looked back at the cabin one last time. Mrs. Miller in the doorway. Her father somewhere behind those walls, maybe waking up, maybe not. "No," Clara said. "But let's go anyway." They turned toward the mountains and rode into the snow. Behind them, everything Clara had ever known disappeared into white. Ahead somewhere she couldn't see, 3 motherless girls were waiting. Emma, Lily, Rose. One of them had already decided to hate her. Clara could feel it somehow, the way you feel a storm coming before the clouds appear. That girl was up there right now planning how to make the new woman leave, how to protect her sisters from another loss, how to prove that no stranger could ever replace what they'd lost. Clara didn't know any of this yet, but she was about to find out. The snow kept falling, and the mountains kept their secrets. The trail climbed for 2 days through snow that never stopped falling. Clara lost feeling in her fingers by the first afternoon. By the second morning, she'd stopped trying to count the switchbacks. There were too many, each one steeper than the last, each one taking them higher into mountains that seemed determined to swallow them whole. Jacob rode ahead, his back straight despite the wind that cut through their clothes like knives. He didn't talk much. When he did, it was practical. "Watch that rock, the trail narrows here. We'll rest the horses at the next clearing." Clara didn't push for conversation. She was too busy staying alive. On the second night, they made camp in a shallow cave that barely kept out the wind. Jacob built a fire with hands that moved like they'd done this 1,000 times, which Clara realized they probably had. "Eat." He handed her dried meat and hard biscuits. "Tomorrow's the worst stretch. You'll need your strength." Clara's jaw ached from clenching against the cold. "How much further?" "Half a day. Maybe less if the weather holds." It wouldn't hold. They both knew it. The sky had that heavy, bruised look that meant more snow was coming. "Tell me about the valley," Clara said. "What am I walking into?" Jacob stared into the fire. The flames threw shadows across his face, making him look older. Harder. "It's hidden," he said finally. "My father found it 30 years ago, back when he was running from debts of his own. Spent his whole life building it into something. Cattle operation mostly. We run about 3,000 head in summer, keep a few hundred through winter. That's a lot of cattle. It's a lot of land." He glanced at her. "Near 50,000 acres all told. The valley itself is maybe 5 miles long, 2 miles wide. Mountains on every side. Only one way in or out, and that closes when the heavy snows hit." Clara absorbed this. 50,000 acres, 3,000 cattle. The man sitting across from her in patched clothes and worn boots owned more land than most people saw in a lifetime. "You ain't poor," she said flatly. "Never said I was. You let me think it. I let you make your own assumptions." His eyes met hers across the fire. "Would you have believed me if I'd ridden up in fine clothes claiming to be wealthy? Or would you have thought I was lying to take advantage?" Clara opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. He was right. She would have laughed him off or reached for her father's rifle. So you tested me. I gave you a choice based on what you could verify. A marriage contract. Money to save your family. Everything else. He gestured vaguely toward the mountains around them. Everything else is extra. That ain't the same as honest. Maybe not. He didn't look away. But I meant what I said about partnership, about not owning you. That part was true, still is. Clara chewed her biscuit in silence. The wind howled outside their small shelter, and somewhere in the darkness, wolves were calling to each other across the peaks. "Your daughters," she said finally. "Do they know I'm coming?" Jacob's jaw tightened. "They know I went down mountain for a wife." "That ain't the same thing." "No, it ain't." "Emma's gonna hate me." "Probably. And you're just letting me walk in there blind. I told you about them, what they're like, what they've been through." He threw another branch on the fire, sending sparks spiraling into the darkness. "What else do you want to know?" Clara thought about it. Their mother, Sarah. What was she like? The name hit Jacob like a physical blow. She saw at the flinch the way his shoulders curved inward, like he was protecting something broken. "She was kind," he said, his voice rough. "Kinder than anyone I ever knew. She could walk into a room and make everyone feel like they mattered, like they were seen." He stared into the flames. "Emma has her eyes. Same color, same way of looking right through you. It's hard sometimes, looking at my daughter and seeing my wife." "Is that why you can't—" Clara stopped herself. "Can't what?" "Nothing." "Say it." Clara met his eyes. "Is that why you can't give them what they need? Because looking at them hurts too much?" The silence stretched between them, filled with wind and fire crackle, and things neither of them wanted to say. "Yes," Jacob finally admitted. "That's part of it." "And you think I can fix that?" "I think you can help. That's all I'm asking." He stood abruptly, moving toward the cave entrance. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's gonna be hard." Clara watched his silhouette against the snow glow outside. This man she'd married. This stranger who carried his grief like a stone around his neck. She'd thought she was the desperate one. Now she wasn't so sure. The third day dawned gray and heavy. They rode in silence through a landscape that seemed designed to kill them, narrow trails, with sheer drops, ice-covered rocks, that made the horses skid wind so cold it burned. Clara's whole body ached. Her lips were cracked. Her eyes watered constantly, tears freezing on her cheeks. Then, just past midday, the trail leveled out. "Look," Jacob said. Clara lifted her head, and her breath caught. The valley spread below them like something from a dream. Snow-covered, but somehow protected, nestled between peaks that rose like walls on every side. She could see buildings, not just a cabin, but real structures. A massive barn, stables, what looked like a bunkhouse, and set back from everything else on a gentle rise, a house that wasn't a house at all. It was practically a mansion. "Welcome to Stone Valley," Jacob said quietly. Clara couldn't speak, couldn't reconcile the man in patched clothes with the empire sprawling below them. "The main house has 12 rooms," Jacob continued as they started down. "My grandfather built it, added to it over the years. There's running water from the springs, cold but clean. We've got 40 workers who stay through winter, more in summer when we're moving cattle." 40 workers, Clara repeated numbly. "They're good people, most of them been with us for years." He glanced at her. "Martha Hayes runs the household. She was my mother's friend. She'll help you settle in." "And your daughters?" "Will be at the house." His hands tightened on the reins. Waiting. They descended in silence. As they got closer, Clara could see people emerging from buildings, men in heavy coats stopping their work to stare, women appearing in doorways. Word was spreading. The boss had returned, and he'd brought someone with him. They reached the main house just as the afternoon light began to fade. A woman stood on the wide porch, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, her posture straight despite her age. Mr. Stone. Her voice carried across the yard. You're back early. Martha. Jacob dismounted, then moved to help Clara down. His hands were brief and impersonal on her waist, but she felt the workers watching, measuring. This is my wife, Clara Stone. Martha's eyebrows rose just a fraction, but Clara caught it. Wife. We married 3 days ago. The preacher can confirm it if you need. I don't need confirmation. Martha came down the porch steps, her eyes never leaving Clara's face. Mrs. Stone, welcome to the valley. Clara straightened her spine. Her dress was travel-stained, her hair escaping its pins, her face wind-burned and exhausted. She looked nothing like the lady of a house this size, but she'd be damned if she'd apologize for it. Thank you, Mrs. Hayes. I'm pleased to be here. Martha's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. You look frozen through. Come inside. I'll have hot water sent up. The girls, Jacob said. Where are they? Something shifted in Martha's expression. Emma's in her room. Has been since you left. She paused. I told her you were bringing someone back. She didn't take it well. And Lily Rose? Lily's been helping in the kitchen. Keeps her hands busy, keeps her mind off worrying. Martha's voice softened. Rose has been asking when you're coming home. Every day 3 or 4 times. Is Papa back yet? Is he back yet? Clara saw Jacob's throat work, saw the guilt flash across his face before he buried it. I'll see them now, he said. Jacob? Martha's voice stopped him. Give the woman a chance to catch her breath before you throw her to the wolves. She knew what she was walking into. Did she? Martha looked at Clara, really looked the way someone does when they're taking measure. Did you, Mrs. Stone, know what you were walking into? Clara thought about the cabin she'd left behind, her father dying in that narrow bed, Hartley's smile, and the darkness behind it. I knew enough, she said. I'll learn the rest. Martha nodded slowly. Well, at least you're honest about what you don't know. That's more than most. She gestured toward the door. Come on then, both of you. Might as well get this over with. The inside of the house was warm, actual warmth, the kind Clara had almost forgotten existed. A massive stone fireplace dominated the main room, flames crackling behind an iron grate. The furniture was solid and well made, the kind that lasted generations. Books lined the walls. Oil lamps cast golden pools of light. It should have felt welcoming. Instead, it felt like walking into a place where grief had settled into the bones. I'll fetch the girls, Martha said. Wait here. She disappeared up a staircase, leaving Jacob and Clara alone in the silence. The house used to be different, Jacob said quietly. When Sarah was alive, there was music sometimes, laughter. She'd have flowers on every table, even in winter, dried ones she'd saved from summer. He looked around like he was seeing ghosts. Now it's just quiet. Quiet ain't always bad. This kind is. He turned to face her. Clara, I need to warn you. But he didn't get to finish. Footsteps on the stairs. Martha descending first, then a small figure behind her, a little girl with dark hair and wide eyes wearing a dress that looked too big for her. Rose. The child stopped halfway down, clutching the banister, staring at Clara like she'd never seen another human being. Papa. Her voice was tiny, uncertain. I'm here, Rosie. Jacob's voice changed completely softer, gentler, breaking at the edges. Come here. Rose flew down the remaining steps and launched herself at him. Jacob caught her, lifting her up, holding her tight against his chest. The child buried her face in his neck, her small hands fisting in his coat. You were gone so long, she mumbled. I counted the days. 8 days, Papa. That's more than a whole week. I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry. Martha said you were bringing someone. Rose lifted her head, looking over Jacob's shoulder at Clara. Is that her? The new lady? Clara's heart clenched. The new lady. Such a simple way to describe something so complicated. That's her, Jacob said. Her name is Clara. She's going to live with us now. Rose studied Clara with the unfiltered intensity only children possess. Are you our new mama? The question hit like a fist. Clara saw Jacob tense, saw Martha's sharp intake of breath. No, honey, Clara said carefully. I'm not trying to be your mama. Your mama was special, and nobody can replace her. She crouched down, putting herself at Rose's eye level. I'm just Clara, and I'm hoping we can be friends. Rose considered this. Do you like horses? I do. Do you like cookies? Very much. Do you like stories? Martha reads me stories sometimes, but she don't do the voices right. Clara felt her lips twitch. I like stories, and I do voices. Rose looked at her father. I think she's okay, Papa. Jacob's expression, relief and grief and something Clara couldn't name, made her chest tight. That's good, Rosie. I think she's okay too. More footsteps. Clara looked up to see another figure on the stairs, a girl of about 8, thin and pale with brown hair and anxious eyes. She was pressed against the wall like she was trying to disappear into it. Lily. Jacob set Rose down gently. Come meet Clara. The girl didn't move. Her eyes darted between Clara and her father, wide with something that looked like fear. It's all right, Clara said softly. You don't have to come down if you're not ready. Lily's gaze fixed on her. Are you going to stay? That's the plan. The last helper didn't stay. She said we were too much trouble. She said Emma was... Lily stopped abruptly, glancing up the stairs. Emma was what? Clara asked. Difficult. The word came from above, cold, flat, challenging. Clara looked up. Emma Stone stood at the top of the staircase like a queen surveying her territory. 12 years old, but carrying herself like someone much older. She had her father's dark hair and his stubborn jaw, but her eyes were exactly what Jacob had described. Blue, piercing, looking right through you. Her mother's eyes. So you're the one he bought, Emma said. Emma. Jacob's voice sharpened. That's enough. Why, it's true, isn't it? You went down mountain to buy a wife like you'd buy a horse or a cow, something to make your life easier. Emma started down the stairs, each step deliberate, her eyes never leaving Clara's face. How much did he pay for you? Was it a lot? I hope it was a lot because you're going to need it when you leave. I ain't leaving. They all say that. Emma reached the bottom of the stairs, stopping a few feet from Clara. Up close, she was small, still a child, despite her sharp tongue, but her eyes held a decade's worth of grief compressed into 2 years of loss. The governesses all said that too. We're not going anywhere. We're here to help. And then they left. Every single one. I ain't a governess. No, you're worse. You're pretending to be family. Emma. Jacob stepped forward. I said enough. You don't get to tell me what's enough. Emma whirled on him, and suddenly the composure cracked, revealing the wounded child underneath. You left us for 8 days. You went to find a replacement for Mama, like she was just something that broke and needed fixing. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Tell me, because I don't understand. Tears were streaming down Emma's face now, but her voice stayed hard, angry. Mama's been dead for 4 years and you barely look at us. You barely talk to us. And now you bring home a stranger and expect us to just accept her? Like she's going to make everything better. Jacob reached for her. Emma. She jerked away from his hand. Don't. Please, let me explain. I don't want your explanations. Emma backed toward the stairs, her eyes wild with grief. I don't want her here. I don't want any of this. She looked at Clara one last time, and her voice dropped to something raw and terrible. My mother is dead. You can't fix that. Nobody can fix that. Then she turned and ran up the stairs. A door slammed somewhere above. The silence she left behind was deafening. Rose's small hand found Clara's. Emma cries at night, she whispered. When she thinks we can't hear, I hear her sometimes. Clara squeezed the little hand gently. Thank you for telling me. Lily had pressed herself further into the wall, tears running silently down her cheeks. Clara wanted to go to her, but something held her back, the knowledge that pushing too hard too fast would only make things worse. Well? Martha's voice broke the silence. That went about as expected. Jacob stood frozen, staring up the stairs where his daughter had disappeared. His face was gray. I should go talk to her, he said. No. Clara surprised herself with the word. Let her be. She needs to feel what she's feeling. She needs to apologize. For what? For telling the truth. Clara faced him. She's right. You brought home a stranger and expected them to accept it. That ain't fair to them. It ain't even fair to you. Then what do you suggest? Time. Clara took a breath. And space. And not forcing them to pretend everything's fine when it ain't. She looked at Lily, still pressed against the wall. At Rose, whose hand was still tucked in hers. I'm not their mama. I ain't gonna try to be. But maybe I can be something else. If they let me. And if they don't, then we figure it out. Together. She met his eyes. Ain't that what partnership means? Jacob stared at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression, not quite trust, but the beginning of it. Martha, he said finally, show Mrs. Stone to her room, the north suite. Not the master bedroom. Martha's eyebrow rose. She'll have her own space, like we agreed. Clara nodded. Thank you. She started toward the stairs, then paused, looking back at the two younger girls. Rose Lily. I know this is strange. All of it. I know I'm not what you expected, and I know your sister is hurting. But I'm not going anywhere. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not until you ask me to. She crouched down again, meeting their eyes. Can we start there, just not going anywhere? Rose nodded immediately. Lily took longer, but finally, almost imperceptibly, her head moved. Okay, Clara said. That's enough for today. She straightened and followed Martha up the stairs, feeling Jacob's eyes on her back the whole way. Feeling the weight of 3 broken children and 1 broken man settling onto her shoulders. Her room was at the end of a long hallway, large, clean, with a window overlooking the snow-covered valley. A fire was already burning in the small hearth. Fresh linens on the bed. Everything she could need. Everything except the one thing that would make this feel like home. Mrs. Stone. Martha lingered in the doorway. For what it's worth, you handled that better than anyone else has. Clara sank onto the bed. Exhaustion was crashing over her now, 3 days of travel catching up all at once. Better ain't the same as good. No, but in this house better is a lot more than we've had. Martha paused. Emma's not cruel. She's scared. There's a difference. I know. Do you? Clara looked up at the older woman. My mama died when I was young. Not as young as Rose, but young enough. I remember what it felt like, thinking nobody would ever understand. Thinking anyone who tried to help was just trying to replace what I'd lost. She swallowed. Emma's protecting her heart the only way she knows how, by pushing everyone away before they can hurt her. Martha's expression softened. Then maybe you do understand. After she left, Clara sat alone in the firelight, listening to the wind howl outside and the silence that filled the spaces between. Somewhere down the hall, Emma was crying. Clara could hear it through the wall's muffled sobs, the kind that come from burying your face in a pillow so no one will know. She wanted to go to her, wanted to hold her and tell her it would be all right. But she stayed where she was, because Emma wasn't ready. And forcing comfort on someone who wasn't ready to receive it was just another kind of cruelty. So Clara sat, and listened, and waited. Tomorrow she would try again, and the day after that, and the day after that, however long it took, because she'd made a promise to a dying man in a cabin far away. Don't let them forget how to laugh. She intended to keep it. The fever came on the third night. Clara woke to Martha pounding on her door, the older woman's face tight with fear in the lamplight. "It's Lily. She's burning up." Clara was out of bed before Martha finished speaking, pulling a shawl over her nightgown as she ran down the hall. She could hear it before she reached the room, the awful rattling wheeze of a child struggling to breathe. Lily lay in her bed, small and pale, her chest heaving with each labored breath. Her skin was flushed, her hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. Rose sat huddled in the corner, clutching a rag doll, eyes wide with terror. "How long?" Clara demanded, pressing her hand to Lily's forehead. Hot, too hot. "She was fine at supper. A little tired, maybe. I thought she was just worn out from the excitement of you arriving." Martha's hands were shaking. "I should have noticed sooner. I should have—" "Where's Jacob?" "Gone. Rode out before dawn to check the cattle in the north pasture. Won't be back till nightfall." Clara's mind was racing. 3 days in the mountains had taught her something: there was no doctor coming, no help from outside. Whatever happened in this valley, they handled themselves. "Boil water," she said, "as much as you can, and find me onions, raw ones, and honey if you have it. Mustard powder, too." Martha stared at her. "What are you going to do?" "What my mama taught me." Clara was already pulling back Lily's blankets, checking her pulse. Rapid, thready. "My brother got the chest fever when he was 6. Doctors couldn't come, we were snowed in just like now. Mama kept him alive with poultices and steam and sheer stubbornness." "Did he make it?" Clara hesitated. Her brother had died anyway 3 weeks later from something else entirely. But that wasn't what killed him. The fever had broken. "He survived the fever," she said. "Now go, hurry!" Martha ran. Rose hadn't moved from her corner. Clara crossed to her, kneeling down. "Rose, honey, I need you to do something important for me. Can you be brave?" The little girl nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I need you to go to Emma's room. Tell her Lily's sick and we need help. Can you do that?" "Emma won't come. She doesn't like you." "She loves Lily, though. Tell her that." Clara squeezed Rose's small hand. "Go on, quick as you can." Rose ran. Clara turned back to Lily, whose breathing had gotten worse in just those few seconds. "Stay with me, sweetheart," Clara murmured, propping her up against the pillows to ease the pressure on her lungs. "I know it hurts. I know you're scared. But you're gonna be okay. I promise." Lily's eyes fluttered open, glassy with fever. "Mama." Clara's throat tightened. "No, honey. It's Clara." "Want Mama." Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "She used to sing when I was sick. Made the bad dreams go away." "What did she sing?" "Don't remember." Tears leaked from the corners of Lily's eyes. "I can't remember her voice anymore. Why can't I remember?" Clara didn't have an answer. So she did the only thing she could. She started singing. An old hymn her own mother had sung to her, one she hadn't thought about in years. Her voice was rough, unpracticed, but she kept going, watching Lily's face slowly relax as the familiar melody wrapped around her. Footsteps in the doorway. Clara looked up to see Emma standing there, Rose behind her. Emma's face was pale, her eyes fixed on her sister. "What's wrong with her?" "Chest fever. It came on fast." Clara didn't stop singing, just softened her voice. "I need your help." "I don't—" Emma's voice cracked. "I don't know what to do." "You know your sister. You know what comforts her." Clara gestured to the bed. "Sit with her. Hold her hand. Talk to her. Remind her she's not alone." Emma hesitated. Clara could see the war on her face, the desire to help battling the walls she'd built so carefully. Then Lily whispered, "Emmy," and the walls crumbled. Emma crossed the room and climbed onto the bed, gathering her sister against her. "I'm here, Lily. I'm right here." "I feel bad." "I know, but Clara's gonna help you feel better. Okay? She's gonna fix it." Emma's eyes met Clara's over Lily's head. Not warm, not trusting, but something else, a desperate plea that said, You better not let her die. Clara nodded once, accepting the weight of that look. Martha returned with the supplies. Clara set to work crushing onions into a paste, mixing them with mustard powder and honey, spreading the mixture onto cloth to make a poultice. The smell was sharp, pungent, filling the room. "This is going to be uncomfortable," she warned Lily. "But it'll help draw out the sickness. You ready?" Lily nodded weakly. Emma held her tighter. Clara placed the poultice on Lily's chest, then wrapped it with cloth to hold it in place. The girl whimpered, but didn't cry out. "Now we steam her." Clara turned to Martha. "The boiling water, pour it into a basin and bring it here. We need to get moisture into her lungs." The next hours blurred together. Clara worked without stopping, changing poultices, keeping the steam going, forcing sips of honey water between Lily's cracked lips. Emma stayed on the bed the entire time, refusing to move, singing the same songs her mother used to sing, even though her voice broke on every third word. Rose fell asleep in the corner, curled around her rag doll, and Clara kept going, kept fighting, kept willing this child to breathe, to live, to give her something to hope for in this house of grief. Near midnight, the door opened. Jacob stood there, snow still melting on his coat, his face gray with exhaustion and fear. "Martha told me. I rode back as fast as—" He stopped, taking in the scene. His daughters huddled together. Clara bent over them, hands working steadily. The smell of onion and mustard heavy in the air. "How bad?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Bad." Clara didn't soften it. "The fever's not breaking. If it doesn't break soon—" She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Jacob crossed the room in 3 strides, falling to his knees beside the bed. "Lily. Lily, sweetheart, Papa's here." Lily's eyes opened, unfocused. "Papa, I'm here. I'm right here." He took her hand, pressing it to his lips. "You're gonna be okay. You hear me? You're gonna be fine." "I saw Mama." Lily's voice was dreamy, distant. "In my dream. She was in a garden, and there were flowers everywhere. She said she missed me." Jacob made a sound, something between a sob and a gasp. "You stay here. You understand? You stay with us." She said she was waiting. "No." His voice cracked. "No, Lily. Not yet. Not yet." Clara watched the strongest man she'd ever met fall apart at his daughter's bedside. Watched him beg, plead, pray, all the things he probably hadn't done since Sarah died. Emma was crying silently, her arms wrapped around her sister, like she could physically hold her in this world. And Clara made a decision. "Everyone out," she said. Jacob's head snapped up. "What?" "Out. All of you. Give me 1 hour alone with her." "I'm not leaving my daughter." "You're scaring her." Clara's voice was sharp, cutting through his panic. "She can feel your fear. Emma's fear. It's making it harder for her to fight." She gentled her tone. "Trust me. 1 hour. If the fever hasn't broken by then, you can come back." "How do I know you won't—" "Won't what? Let her die." Clara met his eyes. "I made a promise to a dying man 3 days ago, that I'd take care of these girls. I ain't about to break it." Something passed between them. A recognition of shared desperation. 1 hour, Jacob said finally. "Not a minute more." He lifted Emma off the bed despite her protests and carried her toward the door. Rose was already in Martha's arms. "Clara!" Emma's voice stopped Clara cold. It was the first time the girl had used her name. "Don't let her die. Please." "I won't," Clara said. "I promise." The door closed. Clara turned back to Lily, alone now in the lamplight. "All right, sweetheart," she murmured, dipping a cloth in cool water and pressing it to the child's forehead. "It's just you and me now, and we're gonna fight this together." She worked in silence for a while, adjusting poultices, keeping up the steam, watching for any change. Lily drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling words that didn't make sense. Then sometime in that quiet hour, Lily's hand found hers. "Clara, I'm here. Are you gonna leave too, like the others?" Clara squeezed her hand. "No. Promise. I promise." Emma says promises don't mean anything. She says people always break them. Some people do. Clara smoothed the hair back from Lily's face. But not me. I ain't never broken a promise in my life, and I ain't about to start now. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, "My mama promised she'd always be here, but she left anyway." The words hit Clara like a physical blow. Such a simple truth spoken with such devastating clarity. "Your mama didn't choose to leave," Clara said carefully. "She didn't break her promise on purpose. Sometimes things happen that we can't control. But that doesn't mean she loved you any less." "Then why did she go?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I don't think anyone knows the answer to that." Clara leaned closer. "But I know this: your mama would want you to keep fighting. She'd want you to get better and grow up and do all the things she dreamed for you. Can you do that? Can you keep fighting?" Lily's eyes focused on hers more clear than they'd been all night. "I'll try. That's all I ask." The hours stretched on. Clara kept working, kept fighting, kept praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. And sometime just before dawn, something shifted. Lily's breathing eased. Her skin cooled. The flush faded from her cheeks. The fever broke. Clara slumped back in her chair, exhaustion crashing over her in waves. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes burned. But when she pressed her palm to Lily's forehead, it was cool, normal. The door burst open. Jacob stood there, wild-eyed, Emma right behind him. "The fever broke," Clara said. "She's gonna be okay." Jacob made it to the bed in 2 strides, gathering Lily into his arms. The sound he made wasn't quite crying. It was deeper than that, something primal and broken, finally being allowed to heal. Emma stood frozen in the doorway, staring at Clara. "You did it," she said. "You actually did it." "We did it." Clara's voice was hoarse. "All of us." Emma didn't move, didn't speak, but something in her eyes shifted the first crack in the armor she'd built so carefully. "I was wrong about you," she said finally. "Maybe, I don't know yet." "That's okay." Clara managed a tired smile. "I ain't asking you to know. I'm just asking you to give me a chance." Emma nodded once, then crossed to her father's side, climbing onto the bed to wrap her arms around her sister and him both. Clara watched them, this broken family, holding each other in the gray dawn light, and felt something loosen in her own chest. She'd done it. She'd kept her promise. The next morning, Clara woke to find Rose standing beside her bed. "Hi," the little girl said. Clara blinked, disoriented. She didn't remember falling asleep, didn't remember anything after leaving Lily's room. Someone must have brought her here, covered her with blankets. "Hi yourself," she managed. "What time is it?" "Martha says it's almost lunch. She sent me to wake you up." Rose climbed onto the bed uninvited, settling cross-legged beside Clara. "Lily's better. She ate porridge and everything." Relief flooded through Clara. "That's good. That's real good. Emma says you saved her life." "I just did what needed doing. Papa's been sitting outside your door." Rose picked at a thread on the blanket. "He didn't want to wake you up, but he didn't want to leave either. Martha said he looked like a dog waiting for its master." Clara almost laughed. "Almost. That don't sound like your papa." "That's what Martha said too. She said she ain't never seen him like this." Rose looked up, her dark eyes serious. "He thinks you're gonna leave now. That's why he's waiting. He thinks you're gonna say this is too hard and go back where you came from." Clara sat up slowly, her body aching in places she didn't know could ache. "Is that what you think too?" Rose shook her head. "You promised you wouldn't leave. You promised Lily. I heard you." You were supposed to be asleep.
I was pretending. Rose's smile was quick, fleeting. I'm good at pretending.
Clara reached out, tucking a strand of dark hair behind the girl's ear. You shouldn't have to be.
That's what Mama used to say.
Rose's voice went quiet.
I don't remember much about her. Just that she smelled nice. And she used to call me her little rosebud. And she said I shouldn't have to pretend to be okay when I wasn't.
Tears gathered in her eyes.
I pretend a lot, Clara. I pretend I'm not scared, and I pretend I don't miss her, and I pretend everything's fine. But it's not. It's not fine at all.
Clara pulled the little girl into her arms, holding her close. Rose buried her face in Clara's shoulder, crying in earnest, now deep heaving sobs that seemed too big for such a small body.
I know, sweetheart, Clara murmured. I know it's not fine, and you don't have to pretend with me, not ever.
You can be sad and scared and angry and whatever else you're feeling. I'll still be here. Promise? Promise. They stayed like that for a long time, the little girl crying out 4 years of grief she'd been too young to understand and too scared to show. When the tears finally slowed, Rose pulled back, wiping her nose on her sleeve. Clara. Yeah. Can I call you Mama? Not all the time, just sometimes, when I need to. Clara's heart clenched. Honey, I don't want to. I know you're not my real mama. I know she's gone and she ain't coming back. Rose's voice was steady, certain in a way that seemed impossible for a 4-year-old. But I need someone to call Mama, just sometimes. Is that okay? Clara thought about Emma, who would probably never accept her. About Jacob, who was still learning to look at his daughters without seeing his dead wife. About this strange, broken family she'd stumbled into. Yes, she said finally. That's okay. Just sometimes. Rose's smile was like sunrise after a long winter. There was a soft knock at the door. Jacob's voice came through the wood. Clara, are you awake? Rose scrambled off the bed. I'll tell him you're coming. She ran to the door, throwing it open. She's awake, Papa. And she's staying. She promised. Clara heard Jacob's sharp intake of breath. She did. She promised Lily last night, and she promised me just now. She's not leaving. Rose grabbed her father's hand, pulling him into the room. Tell her she can stay forever, Papa. Tell her. Jacob stood in the doorway, looking at Clara. His hair was disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. He'd been up all night too, she realized. Watching, waiting, bracing himself for another loss. You don't have to tell me anything, Clara said, standing slowly. I made my choice. I'm staying. Even after last night. Especially after last night. He took a step closer, then another, until he was standing right in front of her, close enough to touch. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. I don't know how to let someone in again. It's been so long since I tried. I ain't asking you to let me all the way in. Just leave the door open a crack. See what happens. His hand came up, hesitated, then gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch was tentative, questioning. Thank you, he said. For saving her, for staying, for all of it. You don't have to thank me. Yeah. His voice was rough. I do. They stood there, not quite touching, not quite apart. Two people who'd come together out of desperation, slowly discovering something that might be worth keeping. Rose watched them with solemn eyes, clutching her rag doll. Papa? Yeah, Rosie. I think Clara's going to be good for us. Jacob looked at his daughter, then at Clara. Something in his face softened, the first real warmth she'd seen there since they met. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm starting to think so too. 3 weeks passed, and the valley settled into a rhythm Clara was starting to recognize. Rose followed her everywhere, now chattering about horses and cookies, and the dream she'd had the night before. Lily was recovering slowly, still weak, but smiling more, letting Clara brush her hair each morning and tell her stories at bedtime.
Even Emma had softened, not warm, not yet, but no longer hostile. She'd stopped hiding Clara's things, stopped making pointed comments about the stranger, started occasionally asking Clara questions about life outside the valley. And Jacob was changing too. Clara caught him watching her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking, found fresh flowers on her breakfast tray, though he never admitted to leaving them. Noticed how he'd started finding excuses to be wherever she was checking on Lily when Clara was reading to her, helping with the horses when Clara was in the barn, appearing in the kitchen just as she was learning to bake bread with Martha. "He's courting you," Martha said one afternoon, amusement crinkling the corners of her eyes. "In his own clumsy way. We're already married. Paper marriage ain't the same as real marriage. He knows that." Martha wiped flour from her hands. "Jacob Stone hasn't looked at a woman since Sarah died. Now he can't stop looking at you. That means something." Clara didn't know what to do with that information, so she tucked it away and kept going. Then the letter arrived. It came with a supply rider who'd braved the passes before they closed completely, the last contact with the outside world until spring. Clara recognized the handwriting immediately. Mrs. Miller's careful script. Her hands trembled as she tore open the envelope. "Dear Mrs. Dear Stone. It is with great sorrow that I must inform you." The words blurred. Clara read them 3 times before they made sense. Her father was dead. He'd passed peacefully in his sleep 5 days after she left. Mrs. Miller had buried him in the family plot beside Clara's mother, using the money Jacob had provided for a proper headstone. "He spoke of you at the end," the letter continued. "Said he was proud of you, said you were the bravest person he ever knew. He went easy, Mrs. Stone. He wasn't afraid." Clara's knees buckled. She didn't remember falling, didn't remember crying out. But suddenly Jacob was there catching her before she hit the ground, his arms solid around her as she crumpled. "Clara. Clara. What is it? What happened?" She couldn't speak, could only hold out the letter with shaking hands. Jacob read it quickly. His face went pale. "Oh God, Clara, I'm so sorry. I wasn't there." The words came out broken, jagged. "He died and I wasn't there. I left him. I left him alone. You saved him months of suffering. You gave him peace. I should have been there. I should have—" A sob tore through her. "He was my father, my papa, and I left him to die alone." Jacob pulled her closer, letting her cry against his chest. His hand stroked her hair, clumsy but gentle. "He wasn't alone. Mrs. Miller was with him. He knew you were safe." Jacob's voice was rough. "You did the right thing, Clara. The hard thing. But the right thing." "How do you know?" "Because I know what it looks like when someone sacrifices everything for their family. I saw it in your face the day we met." He tilted her chin up, making her look at him. "Your father knew too. That's why he let you go." Clara wanted to believe him, wanted to find comfort in his words, but all she could feel was the crushing weight of grief for the father she'd lost, for the goodbye she'd never gotten, for the life she'd left behind. "I need—" She pulled back, wiping her face. "I need to be alone, please." Jacob hesitated. "Are you sure? Please." He let her go. Clara walked out of the house, past the barns and the stables, into the snow-covered fields beyond. She walked until her legs ached and her lungs burned, and she couldn't see the house anymore. Then she fell to her knees in the snow and screamed. She screamed for her father, for her mother, for the girl she'd been, and the woman she was becoming, and all the things she'd lost along the way. She screamed until her throat was raw and her voice gave out. Then she just knelt there, empty, watching her breath fog in the cold air. Footsteps behind her. Small ones. Clara turned to see Emma trudging through the snow, wrapped in a coat that was too big for her. "What are you doing out here?" Clara's voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. Papa told us. About your father. Emma stopped a few feet away, her face uncertain. I'm sorry. Clara laughed bitterly. I thought you'd be happy.
One less thing connecting me to this family.
That's not...
Emma's jaw tightened. That's not fair. Life ain't fair. You know that better than most. They stared at each other across the snow. Two people bound by loss, separated by walls neither knew how to tear down. I remember when my mama died, Emma said finally. I wanted to scream too, but Papa was so sad and Lily was so scared and someone had to hold everything together. So I didn't scream. I just pushed it down, kept it inside. That's a heavy thing to carry. I know. Emma's voice cracked. I've been carrying it for 4 years. Clara saw it then, the exhaustion beneath Emma's defiance, the grief beneath her anger. This child had been holding her family together with sheer force of will, and she was breaking under the weight. You don't have to carry it alone anymore, Clara said quietly. Why? Because you're here now. Emma's laugh was bitter. You'll leave. Everyone leaves. I told you I wouldn't. And I told you promises don't mean anything. Clara pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the snow soaking through her dress. She walked toward Emma, stopping when they were face to face. My father made me promise 2 things before I left. The first was that I'd never marry Samuel Hartley, the man who wanted to buy me like property. What was the second? That I wouldn't let you girls forget how to laugh. Emma's eyes widened. He never met you, Clara continued. Never even knew your names. But he knew you existed. Knew you needed someone. And his last wish, the very last thing he asked of me, was that I'd take care of you. Her voice broke. So don't tell me I'm going to leave. Don't tell me promises don't mean anything. Because keeping that promise is the only way I can still honor my father's memory. Emma stood frozen, her breath clouding in the cold air. You really mean that, she whispered. You're really staying because of a promise to a dying man. I'm staying because it's right. Because you girls need someone. Because your father needs someone. Because... Clara hesitated. Because I need somewhere to belong. And maybe if you'll let me, this can be that place. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 4 years of grief and 3 weeks of resistance. Then Emma did something Clara never expected. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Clara's waist. Clara froze. Emma hadn't touched her since she arrived, had gone out of her way to avoid any physical contact. But here she was, holding on like Clara was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath her feet. I'm sorry about your papa. Emma mumbled into Clara's shoulder. I know what it feels like, the empty space that never fills up. Clara's arms came up slowly, carefully wrapping around the girl. I know you do. I didn't want to like you. Emma's voice was muffled. I thought if I didn't like you, it wouldn't hurt when you left. I'm not leaving. You keep saying that. I'll keep saying it until you believe me. They stood there in the snow, holding each other, 2 broken people starting to mend. Clara felt something shift in her chest, the grief still there, still raw, but no longer quite so alone. We should go back, she said finally, before we both freeze. Emma pulled away, wiping her eyes. Clara. Yeah. I think... The girl swallowed hard. I think maybe I was wrong about you. Really wrong. That's okay. No, it's not. I was mean. I was awful. I tried to make you leave. You were scared. There's a difference. Emma looked at her with something new in her eyes. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of it. The first crack in walls that had stood for 4 years. Can we start over? She asked. Clara held out her hand. I'm Clara Stone. I married your father a month ago. I'm stubborn, I talk too much when I'm nervous, and I make really good biscuits. A small smile tugged at Emma's lips. She took Clara's hand. I'm Emma Stone. I don't trust easy. I read too many books, and I've been terrible to you since you got here. Nice to meet you, Emma. Nice to meet you too, maybe. They walked back to the house together, side by side through the snow. Jacob was waiting on the porch, his face tight with worry. When he saw them coming, Clara's red eyes, Emma's tentative smile, their shoulders almost touching something in his expression shifted. "Everything okay?" he asked carefully. "Getting there," Clara said. Emma glanced at her, then at her father. "I'm going to check on Lily." She disappeared inside, leaving Clara and Jacob alone. "What happened out there?" Jacob asked. "We talked. Really talked." "She touched you. I saw through the window." His voice was strange, thick with emotion. "She hasn't voluntarily touched anyone since Sarah died. Not even me." Clara didn't know what to say to that. Jacob stepped closer, close enough that she could see the pain in his eyes, and something else. Something warmer. "You're changing us," he said quietly. "All of us. I don't know how, but you are. Maybe you just needed someone to show up and not leave." "Maybe." His hand came up, hesitating near her face. "Clara, I know this started as an arrangement. I know you didn't choose me, you chose survival. But I want you to know." He stopped, swallowed. "I want you to know that I'm glad you're here. Not just for the girls. For me too." Clara's heart was beating too fast. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that somewhere between that first night and now something changed. I stopped seeing you as a solution to a problem. Started seeing you as..." He shook his head. "I'm not good at this. Sarah always said I talked like a fence post. But I'm trying to tell you that I care about you. More than I expected to. More than I thought I could." "Jacob, you don't have to say anything back. I know it's too soon. I know you're grieving. But I wanted you to know. In case..." His voice cracked. "In case you were wondering." Clara looked at this man, this broken, stubborn, desperately lonely man who'd bought himself a wife and ended up with something he never expected. "I wasn't wondering," she said softly. His face fell. "I already knew." She stepped forward and kissed him. It was brief, barely more than a brush of lips, but it changed everything. When she pulled back, Jacob's eyes were wide, his breath unsteady. "Clara, I ain't ready for more than that. Not yet. But I wanted you to know that I feel it too. Whatever this is, I feel it." He smiled, then a real smile, the first one she'd ever seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less burdened. "Then we'll figure it out together," he said. "Together." The word hung between them like a promise. Inside the house, Rose's laughter rang out bright and genuine, the sound of a child remembering how to be happy. Clara thought about her father's last wish. Don't let them forget how to laugh. She was keeping her promise. That evening, for the first time since Clara arrived, the whole family ate dinner together. Not in silence. Not with tension thick enough to cut. But actually together, talking, laughing, passing dishes like a real family might. Lily was strong enough to sit at the table now, though she tired quickly. Rose chattered endlessly about the horse she wanted to name after Clara. Emma was quiet but present, occasionally offering a comment or a small smile. And Jacob sat at the head of the table watching his daughters with something like wonder in his eyes. Like he was seeing them clearly for the first time in years. "Papa," Rose said through a mouthful of potatoes. "Clara said she'd teach me to make cookies tomorrow. Can I please? As long as you don't burn down the kitchen." "I won't. I promise." "You said that last time," Emma muttered. "We almost lost the curtains." "That was an accident. Everything with you is an accident." The sisters bickered back and forth, their voices overlapping in the comfortable chaos of family. Clara caught Jacob's eye across the table. He was smiling, really smiling in a way that made him look like a different person entirely. "Thank you," he mouthed. "For what?" she mouthed back. He just shook his head, his eyes bright with emotion he couldn't quite name. Clara understood anyway. She'd given him his daughters back. And in doing so, she'd found something she never expected: a place to belong, a family to build, a future worth fighting for. The road ahead was still uncertain. Spring would bring new challenges: cattle drives, business dealings, perhaps even threats from Jacob's brother Thomas, who Martha had mentioned was always looking for ways to undermine Jacob's ownership of the valley. But for now, in this moment, everything was exactly where it needed to be. Clara looked around the table at these people who'd become her family. Rose chattering happily, Lily gaining strength every day, Emma slowly learning to trust, Jacob finally letting himself feel again. Her father was gone. That grief would never fully heal. But he'd given her a gift before he died: the courage to walk into the unknown. And she'd found something worth keeping. Clara. Lily's voice pulled her back to the present. "Yes, sweetheart." "Will you read to us tonight, all of us together?" Clara smiled. "I'd like that." After dinner, they gathered in the main room by the fire. Jacob in his chair, the girls on blankets at Clara's feet, Martha watching from the doorway with tears in her eyes. Clara opened the book, a collection of fairy tales that had belonged to Sarah, and began to read. Her voice filled the room, carrying stories of princesses and dragons, of good triumphing over evil, of love conquering all. And when Rose fell asleep against her knee, and Lily's eyes drifted closed, and even Emma relaxed enough to lean against her father's leg, Clara kept reading. Because this was what her father had asked for. This was what she'd promised. A family learning to laugh again. Spring came to the valley like a held breath finally released. Clara stood on the porch, watching the snow melt, feeling the first warm wind in months brush against her face. 6 months since she'd ridden into these mountains with nothing but a bag of clothes and a desperate bargain. 6 months since she'd become Clara Stone. It felt like a lifetime. "Mama Clara." Rose came barreling around the corner, her dark hair flying. Her face split with the kind of grin that made Clara's heart squeeze every time. "What is it, Rosebud?" "Papa says the passes are open. He says people can come and go now." Rose grabbed Clara's hand, bouncing with excitement. "Does that mean you could leave if you wanted to?" The question was innocent, but Clara heard the fear beneath it. Even now, after everything, Rose still worried. "I could," Clara said carefully. "But I'm not going to. Promise. I promise." Clara crouched down, meeting Rose's eyes. "This is my home now. You're my family. Nothing's going to change that." Rose threw her arms around Clara's neck. "Good. Because I'd miss you too much if you left. My heart would break into a million pieces." "Well, we can't have that." "Clara." Jacob's voice came from behind them. "We need to talk." Something in his tone made Clara's stomach tighten. She stood slowly, keeping Rose's hand in hers. "What's wrong?" "My brother, Thomas." Jacob's jaw was tight. "He's coming. Got word from a supply rider this morning. He'll be here by week's end." Clara had heard about Thomas Stone, Jacob's younger brother, who'd been contesting their father's will since the day the old man died. Martha had warned her months ago that Thomas would make trouble eventually. Apparently, eventually had arrived. What does he want? Same thing he's always wanted. Control of the ranch. Control of everything our father built. Jacob's hands curled into fists. He's been telling people I'm unfit to run the operation. That I've been hiding in the mountains, neglecting business, making reckless decisions. Reckless decisions. Like marrying me. Like marrying anyone. He thinks if he can prove I'm unstable, he can convince the territorial authorities to appoint him as manager. Jacob met her eyes. He's bringing lawyers, Clara. And investors. This isn't just a family visit. Rose tugged on Clara's hand. "Who's Uncle Thomas?" "Nobody you need to worry about, sweetheart." Clara smoothed the girl's hair. "Why don't you go find your sisters? Tell them I'll be there soon to help with the bread. Rose ran off oblivious to the tension between the adults. What do you need me to do? Clara asked. Jacob was quiet for a moment. You could stay out of it. Keep the girls busy, let me handle Thomas. He's my problem, not yours. We're married, Jacob. Your problems are my problems. This isn't what you signed up for. I signed up for partnership. Remember. Clara stepped closer, taking his hand. Tell me what we're facing. All of it. Jacob's fingers tightened around hers. Thomas has been building a case for months. He's got statements from former workers saying I've been neglecting the cattle operation. He's got financial records he claims show mismanagement. And now, he stopped. Now what? Now he's claiming our marriage isn't valid. Says I was mentally unfit when I proposed. Says you took advantage of a grieving man who wasn't thinking clearly. Clara's blood went cold. That's absurd. That's Thomas. He'll say anything, do anything to get what he wants. Jacob pulled her closer. I won't let him hurt you, Clara. I won't let him take what we've built. He won't. Clara's voice was steady despite the fear churning in her gut. We'll face him together. Show him exactly what this family is made of. Thomas Stone arrived on a Thursday with 3 lawyers, 2 investors from Denver, and enough arrogance to fill the entire valley. Clara watched from the porch as his party approached. Fine horses, expensive clothes, the kind of polish that came from never having done an honest day's work. Thomas himself was younger than Jacob, softer with the same dark hair, but none of the strength in his features. Brother. Thomas dismounted with a flourish. How wonderful to see you. And this must be the famous bride. His eyes swept over Clara, assessing her the way Samuel Hartley used to, like she was something to be appraised, purchased. Mrs. Stone. Clara's voice was cool. I prefer to be called by my name. Of course, my apologies. Thomas's smile didn't reach his eyes. I've heard so much about you. The mountain girl who captured my brother's heart. Such a romantic story. There's nothing romantic about survival, Mr. Stone. I'm sure you wouldn't understand. Something flickered in Thomas's expression. Surprise, maybe, or irritation. He'd expected her to be intimidated, to cower. He'd clearly never met a woman who'd negotiated with debt collectors. Well, Thomas recovered quickly. I'm looking forward to getting to know you better. We have much to discuss. Indeed we do. Jacob stepped forward, positioning himself between Thomas and Clara. Let's get this over with. The meeting took place in Jacob's study with the lawyers and investors arranged around the room like vultures waiting for a carcass. Clara sat beside Jacob, her hands folded in her lap, her face carefully neutral. Thomas laid out his case with theatrical precision. Financial irregularities, neglected business relationships, a hasty marriage to an unknown woman of questionable background. The facts speak for themselves, Thomas concluded, spreading his hands. My brother has been unwell since Sarah's death. He's made decisions no sound man would make. The ranch needs stable leadership I can provide. Are you finished? Clara asked quietly. Thomas blinked. I beg your pardon. I asked if you were finished, because I have some facts of my own. She stood ignoring Jacob's surprised look. You claim financial irregularities. I've reviewed the books myself, every transaction for the past 3 years. The ranch is profitable. More profitable than it was under your father, actually. Would you like to see the numbers? One of the investors leaned forward, interested. You claim neglected business relationships, Clara continued. Yet we've maintained every contract met, every delivery deadline, and expanded into 2 new markets since Jacob took over. I have the correspondence to prove it. Mrs. Stone, Thomas started. I'm not finished. Clara's voice cut through his protest like a blade. You claim my husband was mentally unfit when he proposed, that I took advantage of a grieving man. She met Thomas's eyes directly. Let me tell you what actually happened. She told them everything, her father's illness, the debts, Hartley's proposal and her refusal, Jacob's offer, and the terms they'd agreed to. I didn't marry your brother because he was wealthy, Clara said. I married him because he offered me honesty when everyone else offered lies. He told me exactly what he needed: someone to help raise his daughters, someone to be a partner. And I agreed, because I'd rather build something real with a stranger than sell myself to a man I despised. The room was silent. That's quite a story, Thomas said finally. But it doesn't change. It changes everything. Clara stepped toward him, and to her satisfaction, he actually leaned back. You want to talk about mental fitness? Let's talk about a man who rode into a strange town, assessed a situation, clearly made a practical decision, and followed through on every promise he made. That's not instability, Mr. Stone. That's intelligence. The woman has a point. One of the investors, an older man with shrewd eyes, spoke up. Everything she's described suggests sound judgment, not impairment. You're going to take her word for it? Thomas's voice rose. She's hardly unbiased. No, but the books are. Clara pulled out the ledger she'd prepared. I brought documentation. Every figure, every contract, every decision. If you'd like to review them, I'm happy to walk you through the details. The investors exchanged glances. The lawyers shuffled uncomfortably. Thomas's face had gone red. This is ridiculous. She's nobody. A dirt-poor mountain girl who saw an opportunity and took it. She has no education, no breeding, no what? Clara's voice was deadly quiet. No fancy clothes, no expensive lawyers, no family money to fall back on when things get hard. She stepped closer, close enough to see the sweat beading on Thomas's forehead. You're right. I don't have any of those things. What I have is a spine. And the sense to know that attacking a man's wife in his own home isn't strategy. It's desperation. How dare you? How dare you? Clara didn't raise her voice, but something in her tone made Thomas stop cold. You come into this house where your brother raised his daughters alone for 4 years, where he kept your father's legacy alive through grief that would have destroyed a lesser man. You come here with your lawyers and your accusations, trying to take what you never earned and couldn't maintain if you had it. She turned to face the investors. Gentlemen, I don't know what Mr. Thomas Stone has promised you, but I know this Jacob Stone built this operation into one of the most successful cattle ranches in the territory. He did it while raising 3 daughters, while managing 40 workers, while fighting his own grief every single day. If that's not competent leadership, I don't know what is. The older investor stood slowly. I've seen enough. Thomas's face lit with triumph, then fell as the man continued. Mrs. Stone's documentation is thorough. The operation is clearly well managed. I see no grounds for the intervention Mr. Thomas Stone has proposed. He looked at Thomas with barely concealed contempt. In fact, I'm beginning to wonder about his motives in bringing us here. The other investor nodded. I'm satisfied with Mr. Jacob Stone's leadership. I have no interest in pursuing this matter further. Thomas's composure finally cracked. You can't be serious. You're going to let nobody dictate? They're not letting me dictate anything, Clara said. They're making their own judgment based on facts, something you might try sometime. Thomas turned to Jacob, fury twisting his features. You're going to let your wife speak to me this way? Jacob stood slowly, moving to Clara's side. My wife can speak any way she likes. She's earned that right. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Jacob's voice was hard as stone. Get out of my house, Thomas. Go back to Denver. And if you ever come at my family again, you'll what? I'll let Clara handle you. And believe me, brother, that's not a threat you want to test. Thomas left within the hour, his lawyers trailing behind him like beaten dogs. Clara watched from the window until his party disappeared over the ridge, her heart still pounding with residual adrenaline. That was something. Jacob's voice came from behind her. Clara turned. He was leaning against the doorframe, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I probably shouldn't have called your brother desperate in front of the investors. Probably not. A smile tugged at his lips. But you weren't wrong. He'll be back.
Men like him don't give up easy. Let him come. Jacob crossed to her, taking her hands. He'll find the same thing waiting for him. A family that fights together. Clara looked up at him, this man she'd married for survival, this stranger who'd become so much more. "I love you," she said. The words came out without planning, without thinking. But the moment she said them, she knew they were true. Jacob's breath caught. "Clara, you don't have to say it back. I know this started as an arrangement. I know." He kissed her. Not like before, not tentative, not questioning. This kiss was certain, complete, the kiss of a man who'd finally stopped being afraid. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "I love you too," he said. "I think I have for a while. I was just too scared to admit it." Scared of what? Of losing someone again. Of letting myself feel something that could be taken away. His hands cupped her face. "But you showed me something, Clara. You showed me that loving someone isn't about protecting yourself from loss. It's about choosing to be brave anyway." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Who taught you that?" "You did. Every single day." They stood there holding each other while the spring sun poured through the windows and their daughter's laughter echoed from somewhere in the house. "Papa, Clara." Rose's voice carried up the stairs. "Come quick. Emma's teaching Lily to dance and she keeps stepping on her feet." Jacob laughed, a real laugh, full and free. "We should probably go supervise." Probably. But neither of them moved. Not yet. "Thank you," Jacob said quietly. "For everything. For staying. For fighting. For making this a home again." Clara smiled. "Thank you for giving me somewhere to belong." The next months brought more change than Clara had thought possible. Spring turned to summer. The cattle drives began. The ranch hummed with activity workers coming and going, business expanding, life taking root in every corner. Emma started calling Clara Mama without being asked. Just slipped it into conversation one day, casual as anything, like it had always been that way. Lily grew strong and healthy, her drawings covering every wall in the house. Pictures of horses, of mountains, of their family, standing together under impossible blue skies. Rose announced she was going to marry a horse when she grew up, then changed her mind and decided she'd marry a cookie instead. And Jacob smiled, laughed, reached for Clara's hand without hesitation, kissed her good morning and good night and 100 times in between. On a warm August evening, with the valley spread golden below them and the girls chasing fireflies in the meadow, Jacob led Clara to the hill where Sarah was buried. "I want you to know her," he said quietly, "the way I knew her." Clara looked at the simple headstone. Sarah Elizabeth Stone, beloved wife and mother. "Tell me." So he did. He talked about how they met at a dance in Denver when she'd stepped on his feet and he'd fallen in love anyway. About their wedding, small and simple, with wildflowers she'd picked herself. About the girls being born, each one a miracle that made their world bigger. About the night she died when he held her hand and promised to take care of their daughters, and failed that promise for 4 long years. "I thought I'd never stop grieving," Jacob said. "Thought I didn't deserve to. But you," his voice broke, "you taught me that honoring her memory doesn't mean drowning in it. It means living, building, loving again." Clara took his hand. "She'd be proud of you." "You think so?" "I know so. Look at those girls." She nodded toward the meadow where Emma was spinning Rose in circles, while Lily laughed and clapped. "They're happy, Jacob, really happy. That's because of you. Because you were brave enough to ask for help." Jacob looked at his daughters, at Clara, at the life they'd built together from broken pieces and desperate choices. "I'm glad you said yes," he said. "That day in the snow, I'm glad you chose to stay." "I didn't just choose to stay. I chose you. All of you." Clara smiled. "And I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over, even knowing everything. The isolation, the family drama, 3 children who weren't yours. They're mine now. Clara's voice was fierce. Every difficult moment, every hard choice, every sleepless night, they're mine. This family is mine, and I'm never letting go. Jacob pulled her close, holding her, as the sun set over the mountains they called home. A year after Clara rode into Stone Valley, Martha found her in the kitchen, baking bread like she did every Wednesday. "Letter came," Martha said, setting an envelope on the counter. "From Denver." Clara wiped flour from her hands and opened it. Inside was a formal document and a note. "Dear Mrs. Stone," the note read, "following our investigation, we have determined that the claims made by Thomas Stone regarding the management of Stone Valley Ranch are without merit. Your husband has been cleared of all accusations. Furthermore, based on your presentation of evidence, we have recommended that any future challenges to Mr. Stone's ownership be dismissed without hearing. Thank you for your thorough documentation. Sincerely, Judge William Harrison, Territorial Court." Clara read it twice to make sure she understood. It was over. Thomas couldn't hurt them anymore. "Good news?" Martha asked. "The best." Clara set the letter aside, turning back to her bread dough. "But it doesn't change anything. We would have fought him either way." "That you would have." Martha smiled. "You're something else, Clara Stone. You know that I'm just a mountain girl who got lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. You made choices, hard ones, and you kept making them when easier paths were right there for the taking." Martha patted her arm. "Your papa would be proud." Clara's throat tightened. She thought about her father dying in that cabin, telling her to be brave, making her promise to help 3 girls remember how to laugh. "I hope so," she said quietly. "I really hope so." That night, after the girls were in bed and the house was quiet, Clara stood on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one over the mountains. Jacob found her there, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders before settling beside her. "Thinking deep thoughts. Thinking about how different everything is from what I expected." Good different or bad different? Clara considered. A year ago, she'd been counting fence posts through a frosty window, watching her father die, wondering if hope was worth the effort. Now she had a husband who loved her, 3 daughters who called her mama, a home that would never be taken away, a life built on choices she'd made, not circumstances she'd been handed. "Good different," she said. "The best kind." Jacob took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I have something for you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I know we're already married, but I never did this properly. Never gave you a ring, never asked you the right way." Clara's heart stuttered. "Jacob, let me finish." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band, worn smooth with age. "This was my mother's. My father gave it to her the day they married, and she wore it until the day she died. She told me once that it wasn't the gold that made it valuable, it was the promise it represented. The promise to show up every day and choose each other again." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "I choose you, Clara. Today and every day after. Not because of an arrangement. Not because of desperation. Because you're the strongest, bravest, most stubborn woman I've ever known. And I can't imagine facing another day without you beside me." He slipped the ring onto her finger. "Will you keep choosing me too?" Clara looked at the ring, at Jacob, at the life stretched out before them, imperfect and uncertain and absolutely completely right. "Every day," she said. "For the rest of my life." She kissed him then, under the vast Montana sky, with the mountains standing witness and the valley holding them safe. A year ago, she'd married a stranger to save her dying father. Tonight, she'd married him again, for real this time. For love. Clara Stone stood in the place she'd built, surrounded by the family she'd chosen, wearing a ring that meant everything and nothing all at once. She'd come to this valley with nothing but a promise and a desperate hope. She was leaving it with something better.
a home, a purpose, a love that had grown from the most unlikely soil. Her father had asked her to be brave. She had been. And in being brave, she'd found exactly what she never knew she was looking for. A place to belong, a family to keep, a life worth fighting for. Clara Stone had stopped surviving and started living. And she would never look back.